This is the cast-on stitch, and it's used for flower petals and little edgings and things like that. Very pretty little stitch. It starts with your fabric out of the hoop. You need it free so that you can manipulate the fabric and move it around. And you can use an embroidery needle with this. You don't need a milliner's needle. The stitch is built on a back stitch. So I am going to start, I'm going to do this little row of dots here, or circle of dots, would be like the outside of a flower, all the petals of a flower. So I'm going to start on the dot, a dot to the left, and I'm going to back stitch to the right. So I'm back stitching to this dot, and then I'm going to come out again right in the same hole where this floss is coming out of the fabric. I'm not going to pull the needle all the way through. I'm going to leave it sticking out like that, and then I'm going to turn my fabric so that the needle is pointed away from me, and I'm going to hold on to the needle's eye between my thumb and my middle finger, and then my forefinger, my pointer finger, is right behind the shaft of the needle, and it is going to hold all these little cast-ons on the needle. Once these knots are on here, they need to not spin or it will ruin the stitch. So you need that finger back there always behind the needle to catch these and hold them in place. Okay, you start by holding on to the thread that's coming out of the fabric in your hand like so. You bring your pointer finger up, twist it sharply, and it's really hard to see for you, but there is an X behind my finger right there, and you're going to put the needle right above the X. Once again, up, twist, and then the needle above that X. These knots need to be on that needle very gently. You don't want to tug on them. You don't want them tight. If they're tight, they're going to be, it's just going to be impossible to get your thread through. So up, twist, and through the X. Up, twist, through the X. And I'm going to do, I don't know, 15 maybe on here this time. The number of knots will determine how looped your petal is, how big your petal is. So up, twist, through the X. Up, twist, through the X. And you can see that those try to twist on you, so you need to keep that finger back there. Up, twist, through the X. And I've completely lost count of what I've got on there, but it looks like about 12 maybe. I'm going to stop with that. All right, there they are. You notice that they're right stacked on top of each other. There's no gap between the fabric and the first knot. That's important. And there are no gaps in between them. If I had gaps in between them, I could see my needle in between them, I would end up with little loops on the outside of my petal. So you want them to be completely stacked up against each other. The knots should all be on one side of the needle. Doesn't matter which side of the needle. If you were left-handed, they'd be on the other side of the needle. I'm right-handed, so they're on the right. And then what you're going to do is you're going to pinch those knots completely encased between your two fingers here, your thumb and your forefinger. You don't want to use your fingernail because they'll get away from you. And you want to pinch all the way through pulling this. Don't let go. I just had hand lotion on, so didn't want to. You see how that folded the fabric? That means you're done. And then you just open it up, and you can see that it formed that little that little petal, that little loop. I'm going to go down into the fabric right where the end of this is on that dot, and then I'm going to move forward to the left to this dot because it's a back stitch. So this was my first back stitch, this will be my second back stitch. And when you pull this through, you'll tighten that little guy up. And then I'm just going to do the same thing again. I'm coming here, I'm back stitching here, coming out in the same hole, turn my fabric so the needle's pointed away from me. I'm going to make sure my finger's back here, up, flip through the X. Try to do that more slowly. It's easier to do quickly than it is to do slowly. Once you get the hang of it, I've actually timed it out for a 5-petal forget-me-not flower. It takes 10 minutes to do 1 flower when you're really cooking. I don't know how many petals I have, but we'll say that's about right. They're all lined up. There are no gaps. So I'm going to pinch that completely. Come on. Folded the fabric. And there is my little petal. We'll show you some examples of these used in different ways. And in a separate video, I'll show you how to do a forget-me-not flower, which would be formed around just a little circle, and the petals would be very tightly, they'd be tight together at the base. Very short back stitch they're built on. So, up, flip, above the X. If you cast on this way knitting, you already know how to do this. You just have to make sure that you don't have any tension on your thread the way that you normally would with yarn. So you want to leave your little finger out of the equation. Pinch it, pull it through. As you make these, if you're making several of them at a time, you'll notice that your thread will start getting real kinky and start tangling. It's because you have wrapped that thing a million times and it can't help but get tangled. So just take a little bit of time to maybe untangle it. There you go. Aren't those fun? That's the cast on stitch.